The film begins with this girl named Becky. She's a real angry and brutal teenager with some serious issues. She's been through a lot because her father was killed by this guy named Dominic a couple of years back, and now she's officially an orphan. Becky gets adopted by different foster parents quite often, and she lives in a nice home with all the support she needs. But deep down, she's just pretending to be kind and happy so that nobody gets suspicious. The truth is, she can't stand anyone, and she hates being controlled by the system. Over time, she's managed to escape from 3 different foster parents because Becky prefers living near the forest. She's really skilled too. She trains her body and learns how to use weapons. She's even set up traps around her place, just in case something like the incident with her father happens again. Since last year, Becky lived with an old woman named Elena. The reason Becky wanted to live with Elena was that they both had very similar personalities. They both hated everyone and couldn't stand the rules and the system that governed their lives. That's why they were a great match to live together, away from nosy neighbors and the social life they didn't care for. Even though Becky despised everyone, she still had to work to make a living. So she decided to work as a waitress at a restaurant, dealing with annoying guests regularly. One day while working, she got really irritated by an old man's ridiculous request. He wanted his toast to be baked on teak wood imported from a specific place in central Java province. The old man's request was so absurd that it got Becky all worked up emotionally. In her mind, she imagined smashing a plate and even hurting him with it. Of course, it was just her imagination, and thankfully, nothing like that actually happened. But sometimes she thought that if there were no laws in the country, she might have acted brutally a long time ago. When they got home, Becky and Elena would always chat almost every night. They talked about many things, and one topic that came up was Becky's intense act of defending herself, which resulted in the death of Dominic and his friends 2 years ago. At that time, Elena wondered if Becky might be a psychopath, as it seemed unbelievable for a 13-year-old girl to have the courage to take on 4 experienced ex-convicts in a fight. Becky responded that she simply did what she had to do. Regardless of whether she was a psychopath or not, her brutal actions were driven by a desire for revenge for her father's death. Recently, they heard troubling news on the radio about a community organization causing problems for the residents. They called themselves the NM Group, which stands for Nobel Man. This troubling organization has been linked to lots of violence and vandalism. Unfortunately, the police haven't been able to gather enough evidence to charge any of its members. The next day, by coincidence, 3 members of the Nobel Man group showed up at the restaurant where Becky worked to have lunch. These 3 guys were Anthony, DJ, and Scene. As soon as they walked in, DJ started acting obnoxious. Assuming Becky was just like other women he disrespectfully referred to as a cheap woman. He even thought Becky might be interested in going to a hotel for something fun. Not to be outdone, Anthony also displayed a rude attitude towards Becky. He ordered coffee impolitely and insulted her job as a waitress. It was just too much for Becky to bear. So she decided to take action and deliberately spilled hot coffee on Anthony's thigh, causing him to get a painful blister. After some time had passed, when Becky was heading home, DJ decided to taunt Anthony by saying that Becky accidentally spilled coffee on him. Anthony, being arrogant and quick to get riled up by others' words, got angry and decided to follow Becky to get back at her for what she did. Later that night, Becky was seen sleeping in her room, looking at the lock with the Valkmet symbol, which Dominic and his friends targeted in the first film. But even now, Becky still didn't know what the key's purpose was. Shortly after, Becky heard the sound of an intruder in her house. When she went downstairs to check, she was immediately captured by Anthony and his friends. Not only that, but DJ also managed to defeat her pet dog Diego by hitting him with a baseball bat. Meanwhile, Scene didn't want to be involved, but he was threatened with expulsion from the organization, leaving him with no choice but to join in. Suddenly, they were all surprised by Elena appearing with a rifle. She ordered DJ to put his gun down, but then Anthony aimed his gun at Elena. Tragically, Anthony shot her, and Becky was knocked unconscious when Anthony hit her head on the floor. The next day, when Becky woke up, she noticed that Diego was gone. It turned out that Anthony and his friends had deliberately taken him. Later, Becky buried Alana in the forest behind the house so the police wouldn't get involved. Sadly, Becky's life had been disturbed by bad people. First, her parents died, and now Alana, her only family left, was gone too. This brought back her anger and brutality, and she decided to take revenge on all three of them. Shortly after, Becky prepared the necessary tools and even painted her fingernails to look fashionable in front of the criminals. She remembered when Anthony and his friends mentioned a name, Daryl, at the restaurant. She realized there were only 2 people with that name in the city. When she met Daryl, she found an old, seriously ill woman who always wore oxygen. Seeing this, Becky didn't feel suspicious and decided to go see the second Daryl. She knew his house was right on the edge of the lake. At the same time, Anthony and his friends had just arrived at Daryl's place too. Sean was still worried about last night's incident and was about to talk to Daryl about it, but Anthony stopped him and scolded him for overthinking. Anthony then told Sean that killing someone and stealing a dog were no big deal. Finally, they met Daryl, the head of the Nobleman organization, who lived with his right-hand man named Twig. There, Daryl questioned them about where they were last night and how they got the dogs. Confidently, Anthony explained that their car had a flat tire, so they had to spend time at the restaurant. They found the injured dog on the side of the road by chance. He also mentioned that he still had a conscience, so he decided to take care of the dog out of concern for animals. While they were having breakfast, Becky had already made her way into Daryl's private room. Then, while Becky was searching for important information about all of them, Daryl and Sean suddenly entered Daryl's room to discuss something crucial. Sean turned out to be a new member of Nobleman, and Daryl felt the need to explain the organization's vision and mission to him. At that time, Daryl also showed Sean a list of names of important people who funded their organization. Eventually, Daryl revealed that they were planning to carry out demonstrations and uprisings at the city hall, with the intention of targeting a member of the House of Representatives named Hernandez, whose face was on a mannequin statue in Daryl's room. Sean was shocked to discover that he had joined a radical and terrorist-like organization. Initially, he had only wanted to participate in peaceful demonstrations to voice his concerns about state policies. However, Daryl threatened him, saying he'd kill any traitor. Feeling trapped, Sean had no choice but to do whatever Daryl said. As Sean and Daryl left the room, Becky, who had been hiding under the bed, came out and quickly took photos of their planned rebellion at the city hall. Not only that, she also managed to steal a flash drive containing the names of important people funding the organization. After successfully leaving the house, Becky rushed to Daryl's warehouse. To her surprise, she found a large number of heavy weapons neatly stored, including explosives and gas masks, which Daryl intended to use during the upcoming uprising at the town hall. On the other hand, Daryl and the others were about to celebrate the success of their organization when they heard someone knocking on Daryl's door. When Daryl opened the door, they found a ringing cell phone claiming to be Becky's. This made Sean, Anthony, and DJ panic. At first, DJ and Anthony tried to hide the truth, but Sean insisted on being honest. In the end, Anthony confessed that last night they killed an old woman and took a dog that belonged to a girl named Becky. To avoid making Daryl even angrier, Anthony agreed to meet Becky and return her dog, Dago, peacefully. However, Becky, who had been hiding behind a tree, lured Anthony into the forest. He fell into a trap hole she made using a bulldozer. Becky initially thought of quickly killing Anthony by shooting him, but she decided it would be more interesting to use a brutal method without directly killing him. At that time, Becky unexpectedly tied Anthony to a chair and put something in his mouth. Then she connected the trigger to a small rope tied to Daryl's doorknob. When Daryl opened the door, Anthony immediately died. Seeing Anthony dead, weak-hearted Sean felt terrified and didn't want to become a victim for something he didn't do. Sean finally made the tough decision to leave Nobleman and walked out of Daryl's house. But Daryl swiftly killed Sean with his bare hands, which saddened EJ to see a member die by the hands of their own leader. However, DJ felt trapped and had no choice but to comply with all of Daryl's demands. Meanwhile, Twig came out of the house with a gun, checking to see if Becky was still around. Shortly after, Darrell received a call directly from Becky, who claimed to have all the evidence of his crimes, including a flash drive with a list of important people involved in their illegal activities. However, Becky's words infuriated Darrell, and he called Twig back. But to Darrell's surprise, Becky shot an arrow that hit Twig. Although injured, Twig survived, and Darrell removed the arrow. Soon after, Becky appeared and led Twig on a chase, running toward the armory. Meanwhile, Darrell ordered DJ to help Twig, but DJ ran away, leaving Twig to be persuaded by Becky to enter the warehouse. As the exit door closed, Becky threw a smoke grenade, making it hard for Twig to breathe. She then appeared with a lawnmower, imagining a hard way to kill Twig, but she couldn't find the car keys to start it. Nonetheless, Becky still had a sword and used it to kill Twig. However, in the midst of her actions, she was shot with an anesthetic bullet in her neck. Later, Becky woke up bound and helpless. At that time, Darrell had taken away all her equipment, including bags, knives, fire gas cylinders, and the valuable Valknut key belonging to the Dominic group. Surprisingly, the key had a coordinate number that Darrell accidentally discovered while checking it. On top of everything, Becky was shocked to see an old woman wearing an oxygen cylinder whom she had visited earlier that afternoon. To her surprise, the old woman turned out to be Darrell's mom and the head of the Nobelman organization. Darrell explained to Becky that the upcoming uprising at City Hall was ordered by his mom, who received it from top officials funding their organization. The names of these officials were in the flash drive Darrell had. This situation gave Becky an advantage because Darrell couldn't kill her before getting back the flash drive. At first, Becky didn't want to reveal where she had hidden it. However, Darrell threatened to kill Diego if she didn't comply. Luckily, when her hands were freed from the bindings, Becky managed to escape and sprayed him with a toxic spray. While Darrell went to the bathroom to clean his eyes affected by the spray, Becky seized the opportunity to throw a knife at his mom, killing her. Shortly after, Darrell immediately chased after Becky as she ran into the forest. However, Becky cleverly set a trap, causing him to step on a rusty iron bear trap and scream in pain. He tragically died when a similar trap hit his neck. 24 hours later, Becky found herself in the CIA office, being interrogated by Agent Mary. There, Mary explained that the flash drive contained the names of terrorists posing as government officials in different agencies all over the country. After witnessing Becky's incredible ability to single-handedly dismantle the terrorist group led by Darrell, Mary told her that the CIA wanted to recruit her as the youngest agent in their history. Mary explained that Becky's first mission was to capture DJ, a member of Darrell's group who managed to escape. Besides that, Becky had to uncover the mystery behind the key with the Valknut symbol. Sometime later, DJ was seen fixing his broken car on a quiet street. Suddenly, Becky appeared in a cool car, dressed in a CIA uniform. To everyone's surprise, she pulled out a bazooka and took down DJ, who was completely defenseless. The film concludes with Becky smiling contentedly after blowing up DJ's car. And the film ends. The moral lesson from the film is when life gets tough, become a CIA agent, get a bazooka, and blow up your problems.